Welcome back to Study History with Mr. P. Today's video is a little bit different. It's just all about effective revision strategies that you can use not just in history but any subject. So please take the time to listen to this presentation and it might help you with revising for your exams. Okay, so there's many reasons why we revise, but perhaps the biggest one is the fact that we forget a lot of what we learned the first time round. So this is the Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve, and we can see that ideally at the end of a lesson you've got 100% of information retained, but within 20 minutes of leaving that lesson you will have forgot something like 40% of that information over the course of a day, perhaps up to 60%. But all is not lost because we revise. So if we revisit material that we've learned and we revisit it regularly or review it regularly, then we can reduce that forgetting curve so that over time we remember more. So enough of the background to revision, let's get on to some effective revision strategies. Well, there's a whole range of revision techniques and here are just a few. I'm just going to read through these and tell you so that you know what they are, and then we're going to look at how some of them are more effective than others and go through some examples of how to use them. So one revision technique is called elaborative interrogation. This is a questioning strategy that uses why questions in order to encourage you as students to connect new information to existing knowledge that you have. There is also self-explanation. This is where you explain to yourself pieces of learning material to help you improve your understanding of it. Summarising, where you produce a summary of information. Highlighting or underlining information. Keyword mnemonics and other mnemonics. In a keyword mnemonic, you connect a new vocabulary word to prior learning by using a visual, so some kind of picture to depict that definition and link it to the new vocabulary words. There's also something called imagery for text, where you visualise an image while reading a text or some information to help you better understand and remember it. Rereading, where you reread what you've already written. Practice testing, where you practice actual questions or test yourself in other ways. Spaced or distributed practice. This is where you spread out your studying over time rather than just do all of one topic or theme for one long period. And finally, interleave practice, where you switch between ideas when you revise. Now the thing is, some of these techniques are more effective than others, as we can see on our next slide. So some of the revision techniques are seen as being more effective than others. So the highly effective ones include practice testing and spaced or distributed practice. The model or quite effective ones are seen as being elaborative interrogation, self-explanation and interleave practice. And the less effective or low effective ones are summarising, highlighting and underlining, keyword mnemonics and imagery for text. But it doesn't mean you should never use the lower effective techniques, because they might be ways to start your revision and then you go on to use them for other practices or revision methods. So let's go through then how we can revise some techniques, and obviously if at any point you want to pause the video to reread some of this information, you can. So I'm going to focus on 6 strategies for effective learning. I'm going to drill down to spaced practice, interleaving, elaboration, using concrete examples, dual coding and retrieval practice. So 6 ways to revise effectively. Number 1, spaced practice. So this is when you spread out your studying over time rather than just do all of one topic or theme for one long period of time. And then the following 5 strategies you can use whilst doing spaced practice. So interleaving, this is where you switch between ideas when you revise, and then when you repeat this you can also vary the order in which you do it. Thirdly, elaboration, when you explain, describe and connect ideas with as much detail or information as possible. You have your books, your notes, etc. with you whilst you try and do this, so you're trying to elaborate on an idea using information available. Concrete examples, so this is where you might use a specific example to understand an abstract idea. So for example, if you're doing geography or travel and tourism and you might try and explain the abstract idea of supply and demand, you might use the concrete example of how prices for airline tickets go up as the plane gets more full. Dual coding. This is when you use both text and images to revise or remind you of information. And finally, retrieval practice. This is a number of methods that you can use to recall what you know. It can happen in a number of ways. So practice questioning, which is one of the most effective methods of revision, but also writing down all that you know about a topic and then checking it. And there's a few other ways that you can use this as well, so such as through your knowledge organisers for look, cover, write, check. So I'm going to talk you through a couple of those methods now in a little bit more detail and some examples that connect to retrieval practice methods. So some examples of different retrieval methods then. Flashcards. I've not mentioned these yet, but one way to retrieve knowledge that can be highly effective is using flashcards. Now, many of you are probably used to using flashcards, but there's a method of using flashcards that help you revise even more effectively. So you can use flashcards to prompt and recall learning using spaced practice, but you also focus on the idea of recalling information, and the information that's easily recalled is then revised less often. So say you start with all your flashcards for one topic. You try all the questions. If you answer all the questions correctly, you place them in the next box, as you see on the screen, that you'll try a couple of times a week rather than every day. But if it's incorrect, you leave it in the everyday box. Then the next time you do your revision, or your flashcards, anything that's in the twice a week box might move to a once a week box if you get it correct. But equally, questions that you get wrong, you remove back a box, as you can see in the diagram now. So you could have more boxes. You could change the intervals between this, but the idea is you have your flashcards, but you don't just do all the flashcards all the time. The ones that you know, you revise less often. The ones that you're still less secure on, you use more. And then Cornell Notes. So this is where you might take a page of notes for a given topic or a lesson. So you have a main notes section, as you can see here in these two diagrams. This is where you take down as many key points as you can during a lesson or revision session, so key words, key ideas, etc., etc. Using bullet points instead of full sentences might be helpful here, as well as perhaps using abbreviations and other ways to help you summarize key points. What you then do is you revisit that main notes column with a Q column. In this Q column, you reduce your notes into essential ideas in order to practice recall. So it might be the keywords, concepts, facts, dates. You then, in the bottom section, reflect and review what you've learned. So after a class or after a revision session, you then go back to this and summarize the main points from the notes that you have made. Now, another effective method that I've shown here, well, actually this shows two. This shows at the top, as well, throughout the whole slide, the whole idea of dual coding. I've got some images here that reflect the idea of look, cover, write, check, one of the excellent methods that we can use with knowledge organisers. And those four images are a cue to remind you what look, cover, write, check are. But also focusing on what look, cover, write, check is. Well, knowledge organisers, as you've used, contain critical knowledge that you must know. And they'll help you remember more and learn more complex information and concepts. So using knowledge organisers will make you more successful in your subjects. So the way to use them is by using the look, cover, write, check method. So you look at the text. So you spend a small amount of time reading a section of a knowledge organiser and trying to memorise the content. You then cover up that section, and whilst it's covered up, you try to write out the information that you've tried to memorise. You then check it. So you uncover the section of knowledge organiser and check every word, including the spellings. You make any corrections, probably in a green pen. If it's all correct, tick it. If not, you correct the mistakes. You then keep repeating this process, perhaps for a whole page, without leaving any empty lines. And in this practice, you are actively revising contents. And finally, some effective revision techniques. Just a summary of what we've learned today. So you need to have a regular routine for revision each week so that you can rotate across the content that you have learned. There are a number of ways that you can revise, but no one method is best on its own. However, active revision techniques are proven to boost your exam performance. So reading your work is a good start. It's even better if you do something with that reading, to turn it into flashcards, rewrite your work using Cornell Notes and so on. Using knowledge organisers are good, but they're less effective if you just read and copy from them. More effective if you use the look, cover, write, check method that I've just talked to you about, because then you're actively revising and remembering content. Answering exam questions is ideal practice. Answering them or whole papers in time conditions is even better because it focuses you on writing at pace and at the pace you need to for exams. You can even use your past paper packs or past questions and look at the topic of a question and then revise the topic of the question using one of the active revision techniques I've talked about before then trying the question, because there's no point in trying questions if you don't have an idea to put in it. And lastly, of course, you can watch revision videos, but that's more effective if you pause or make notes from the videos to check them out. So hopefully you found this a useful video for revision techniques.